Welcome to the Driven to Engage podcast. With me today, I've got Martin Parr from Acura of Reno, formerly of the Tonkin Auto Group up in the Portland area. And Martin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate being here.
Awesome. So Martin and I come from, we were connected by a good friend of ours, Jim Brown, I knew him from Tonkin Acura, or I think it's still Tonkin Acura, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, and it's been, I've known Jim for, God, I bet, well, at least 13 years. I've come back to maybe
awesome.
Before 2010. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about, Martin, how you kind of got started. Tell us a little bit about your journey here.
Well, 28 years ago, my wife and I sold an audio business that we own 29 years ago now, and went to work at Ron Tonkin Acura in Portland, Oregon, with Michael Cho. Brought me on.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, phenomenal. Definitely one of my, he's not with us anymore, but a great friend and a great start to the business, a great way to start out the business for sure.
I remember he was really highly thought. So when I was running the Acura program for Shift Digital, one of my strategists was Marla Cardenas. And I'm not sure how Marla knew Michael Cho, but she held him in the highest regard. And so I always kind of put him on a bit of a pedestal because of your admiration of him.
And I ran into that everywhere and I loved it.
Really?
He taught me things that I'll take with me forever, and not just in the car business, but in life.
Yeah.
It's an awesome person to have as my first boss in the car business.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Yeah. So take me through that. What did that look like? I remember my first day. Even going to interview. What got you into an Acura dealer 28 years ago?
Well, I knew the Tonkins, and I knew they owned great dealerships in the Valley. And we were living in Bend, Oregon at the time, and decided to move down there, and went over there and talked to him at Acura, and it was the start of something great. My first day was walking. That was when there was no thing as training. Go sell a car. So I got there and a backpack with me and a jacket, and I was told to go sell a car, that somebody would be with me in a couple hours or tomorrow. So I didn't know what to do, so I threw my coat and backpack behind a chair in the waiting room, and because I didn't know where to put it.
Right.
Been in a car dealership or worked at one before, and walked outside to look at the inventory because I thought at least I'll go look at the cars. Met a lady out there that had just pulled in. She goes, "Hey, I like this green car." She goes, "Can I drive it?" Because she had parked right next to it, and I go, "Sure." Luckily, there was a lot of tenant out there, and I go, "Hey, can I drive this car?" He goes, "You need to get a salesman." I go, "I am one." And he goes and over to the keyboard, gives me a key. I take the lady out during the test drive. She goes, "I'll take it. I love it. This is awesome." A Legend Coupe 6-speed manual.
Oh, shit.
Super rare green. I'll never forget it, green over tan.
Yep. Yeah. I can picture the car.
Store. We pull right in front. I get out. I'm walking in, and I go up to Ed Ski, the sales manager at the time, and I go, "Hey, but I got a lady that wants to buy a car." And he goes, "Well, let me get you a salesman and we'll help her out." She goes, "No, I want the car." She's standing next to me, and he goes, "What?" He stood up from the desk there, put his hand across the counter, and he goes, "You and I are going to be best friends."
Oh, yeah.
That was about 18, 20 minutes after I got there.
And a shortcut 10 different ways to Sunday on the car.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I didn't know what I was doing. He goes, "So which car is it?" I go, "This one." And I held up the key, and I'm like, "That's it. Yep."
Well, I could just imagine him say, "Well, son, that's actually a customer's car in service. We're going to have to find another one."
That would have been great. Drive some car that was sold 3 months ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what was it like at that time? Like if you were to take the way the business is now compared to that moment when you started, where do you see some of the differences?
So not only was the client less educated, but the sales force was less educated. All of us were. It was all about, I don't want to say like, it was just a win-lose mentality or lose-win mentality. It wasn't a win-win in many ways. overall in the business, not, just at that store. That store they wanted everybody to do good, the salesman and the customer, but the whole atmosphere of the car business, gee, I
Yeah.
mean, it was so different. Let's not put prices on our cars.
Right.
And then if the customer likes it, tell them a higher number. Things like that. There was no nothing to hold you accountable. The
Mhm.
customer or the salesperson.
Yeah.
You've got something there to hold you accountable. I think everybody's better off for it.
Mhm.
The clients are educated better, which I love. An educated client is an easy client. And this is a person business. It's not a car business. It's not a
Yeah.
steak knife business. It's nothing else but people. So
Yeah.
an educated client is your best one. And using that and realizing that, it makes the salesman better. But you also today you want an educated salesperson. You want
Mm.
educated desk managers. You want people that can talk to anybody, but be educated about the choices they make and the decisions they make and the conversations they have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, like, y I feel like there's pockets of that still exist today,
Yeah, there is.
you know?
I still see it. Hear about it. Just a couple months ago, I bought a side by side just for my family and I to enjoy it. Go out in the world. We love it out in
Yeah.
the desert here and the mountains and stuff. And I ran into some of those dealerships.
Did
It
you?
was amazing. I was like,
Yeah.
did I just jump back to the late 80s, early 90s? It was amazing, the
Right.
stuff that I ran into. It was just, and of course, when I get off the phone, I was calling my friends. I called Jim Brown. I'm like, you would believe what I heard. I'm like, this stuff that's out there is insane still going on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I remember I started selling cars in North Seattle in 1989, and I literally remember us having training on how to get the customer to climb in the trunk of the car,
Yeah.
you know? And we had an ongoing spiff that if you got a customer to do that, and everybody who was standing on the point had to kick in $20 every time you got somebody in the trunk, And so,
All that customer control issues.
it was crazy. Ease
You
on
know?
and all that stuff, right? So,
Yeah.
it never really resonated with me. I was a small town kid who grew up pumping gas in his mom's country store, So this whole thing was just a different reality for me. How did that come for you? Coming from a business that you operated with your wife, that would have been very customer focused, right?
Yes. It was amazing. I mean, in the schedule for like the salespeople, you had 1 day off, then 3 days on, and 2 days off, and 4 days on. And gee, in my, I think first 3 weeks there, we went through 7 or 8 people, salespeople.
Really.
And to them there, it didn't surprise anybody or upset them. They were
Mm.
used to it. And luckily, Mr. Cho was very open to suggestions and thoughts of improvement. And I, coming from my business, I actually ran 2 stores at the end and said, I can help with this schedule.
Mm.
A lot of the salesmen were divorced and single back then,
Right.
single or going to be divorced and single if they didn't change careers. And we came up with a new schedule and worked that and realized, wow, we can make it family friendly. And which also made it customer friendly. They had the same face when they came in. You could tell them, hey, come by, I'm here these days. The
Right.
client could have a friendly face when they walked in on Wednesday, and you told them that. Not one Wednesday they're there, and then the next Wednesday they're not.
Yeah.
So it made it better for the client, for everybody. But it was I was trying to almost infuse a small business feel into a big business, without even realizing it at the time.
Right.
Then, later on, kind of felt the need for that, and it worked.
Yeah. It's funny, that piece, right? It's almost a badge of, you see it sometimes in these Facebook groups and that sort of thing. It's a badge of courage almost that, I work 60, 70 hours a week
Yeah.
at the expense of, everything else in someone's life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about your son in track. I mean, you wanna, if you have that healthy around you, you're gonna be healthier at what you do. I mean, it's a
Right.
fact.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have that healthy life, your kids are looking at you with that sincere look of knowing that you're their father and you're there and you're keeping the house together. You're not just providing money for the house. You're doing more than that. And you can keep that whole package together. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And how much healthier you are then because of that. Your relationships with your family, work, your employees, all that, all flow together much better.
Yeah. And we get sold I remember having a GM when I was really struggling with that, when my
Oh,
wife
yeah.
wasn't well, and I was feeling that disconnect. And he was like, well, your kids will appreciate all your hard work now, for the
Yeah,
life
they
that you
won't.
provide them, and it's like, um, it's not, that's actually an interesting piece, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
we have this grinded out mentality that, you know, is lost on really, and that, I think, is where we talk about people, right? And
Yeah.
how are we generating how are we mentoring our people, and that sort of, is that something that you've carried on with you now in the stores that
Yeah.
you run subsequent?
In fact, that whole lifestyle of that, and in fact, that was probably infused on me with Jim Brown and Jason Jellison at Acura
Mm,
when I was there. Because then we did a radical schedule change. We got rid of crews. That was when we had 18 salespeople, three crews
wow.
of six. So that store was pumping out cars, and there was so many guys that wanted Wednesdays off, Saturday mornings off, Sunday mornings for church, Saturday evening off to go out to the dance clubs, whatever it was. So we said, okay, we don't need crews anymore. That wasn't me. That was Jason Jellison and Jim Brown. And they totally redid that whole thing and said, okay, we'll get rid of crews. We'll make every single person have their own schedule. Every single employee have their own schedule. As long as we had certain senior people and certain rookies at the same time coverage, and it worked. So then jump forward 20 years later, I'm at Ferrari Maserati, Ronton Gran Turismo,
Right.
and down to 3 salespeople. And they want time off
Yeah.
and days. And I said, hey, you guys, you're all mature adults. Put together a schedule, bring it to me that you all agree on, agree to cover vacations. And for 5+ years, never had to worry about another schedule again. And all
Yeah.
3 of them are still there. All 3 of those guys are still there today and doing phenomenal.
Yeah. It's funny, like, what, I don't know where there is this propensity to control the team, that we seek that out, but why would we want to wait as a leader in the
Yeah.
store? Why would you want to waste all of your, uh,
Energy on a schedule.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Why not
Yeah.
empower them to come up with it,
Because we don't know their lives. We don't know when their wife has certain days off, or she's got a different job, or they've got daycare issues, things
Yep.
like that. If you empower those people with it, and then there's also no excuse for them not to cover that, to be there. They've
Right.
made their schedule. They've agreed on it. They've signed off on it. So that's what I would say. Bring it to me. So then here in Reno, same thing basically. Got the guys, figure out a schedule, write it up amongst yourselves. They looked at me in shock, and I said, just all of you sign it, get it done. And
Yeah.
now today they love that. There's no, hey, can I get this or that? Everybody's in flow.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great thing it's almost a gift that you're giving them in that regard, because I think so much of what we do is for the purpose of what we do outside our work. And
Yeah.
if we're able to fill up our batteries, then we just
Yeah.
have so much more energy when we're doing the work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of that, work to live,
Mm,
and your guys should be able to do the same, they'll work their job, but live their life, that doesn't have to totally consume them when they go home. We have group texting we do here when a car sells, when issues happen that the salesmen know about, but there's a store rule that we followed at Gran Turismo when we started that, and we brought it to the store here at Acura. There's only positive on there. You can't, that's not a spot where you can send out a text that says, hey, I need to make sure you guys are dumping your garbages, or I need to make sure you're fixing the front line. You didn't park your trays. There's none of that on the group text. None of that's allowed, because that group text could be when those guys are off. I went to the GM after we were doing it, or the GSM and our sales managers, and I go, would you want to be sitting at the beach up at Tahoe and all of a sudden get a text about you didn't park your trades and stuff like that? And you're sitting there with your kids, and your kids begging you to come out and go swimming again. And you get that text. It's in your
yeah.
head now for the next hour or two. No, you don't want that. So no negativity. Live your life.
Yeah. There's none of that stuff that's gonna, you know, we're all human. As long as we're looking out for one another. If someone
Yeah.
starts, it's funny that, because one of the things that it's interesting, the company I work with now, Performance by Design, they have the guy, one of the original founders was a coach in Australia, and they had something that was unofficial, but the media got a hold of it, and it was, they had a no dickhead policy. And So just don't be a dickhead. Don't be the guy that's continually just leaving your trades parked
Yeah.
in customer parking. And yeah. So how do you manage that then?
So that actually came up at Gran Turismo. We would have that. So there was a little thing that it would it wouldn't be considered bullying because we weren't a fan of that, but it was something that caught on very effective and it worked very well. So we had gentlemen there, with different names, and we just minused either the first or the last letter off their name. So if it was Tanner, it's Anner. So we'd get on the speaker phone on the thing and say, "Hey, Anner, your car needs to be parked. Hey, Evan, your car needs to be parked," which would be Kevin. So then everybody would say, "Hey, Evan, you got to park your car." So nobody wanted to be known by the
Right.
just one name, and everybody knew if there was an intercom and it said, "Hey, Evan, to my office, please." Kevin would run outside and park his car. Then he would come to the office. When he knew just that one
The code.
his car was out there somewhere. And so it became a funny thing. We found a way to laugh about parking your car, but it also was effective and we got it done right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I brought that here to this store, same thing, and I used the PA for it. And it's like, hey, we got a car that's not, I don't even have to say a car's not parked. I just page that name to my office, and also it takes them 5 minutes to get to my office because they're looking for the keys and parking the car.
Right. Right.
But again, let's just, have fun with it and move on from it. It's the housekeeping that every dealership needs to deal with. But
Mm.
yeah.
So
In fact, Michael Baumgart here is our GSM, and he's doing a great job. And this is his only store he's ever worked at. So
wow.
he started here in sales and worked his way up, and we've become friends over the time. And he's like, "Wow, we're doing things a lot different. We're doing things and he likes the way things are going, and he's absorbing it very well.
Yeah.
It's working really good, and he likes the way I'm having fun with the guys with those kind of things. It's like, okay, so is it okay to say that over the phone system? The people in parts might hear that or service. I go, great. They'll wonder who Evan is. Is it a new employee? When they come out, introduce him to him. I thought your name was Kevin. No, it was Evan for the last 10 minutes.
Back to Kevin now.
Yeah, but I'm back to Kevin now.
Now that I got my treat out of customer parking.
Yeah.
So when you started, when you were at Tonkin Acura, how long did you stay in a sales capacity before you got the tap on the shoulder to move up the line?
Interesting thing. When we were opening, I should say, when Michael was coming down to Reno to open the store 15 years ago, we had a big shuffle there. And during that time, they had asked me to desk part-time. So it was a really interesting choice. I was the only one doing it in all 20 plus of our stores. And they made it a hybrid position. And I actually ended up doing it for quite a few years. So I'd either open a store, Jim Brown and I shared desk, and he had this little thing he would do every time when I come in. He had his coffee cup on the desk with his Starbucks, those little holders, the green props in them. He would take his stuff and his pen. He would move it over to the right. He would walk up, get up, he'd even turn the screen off, and I'd sit down and I'd take over. So, switch. We do this switch every day at the same spot. And then I'd go back on the floor and sell cars. So, or vice versa. I'd be selling for half a day, then I'd jump on the desk.
Wow.
I cover the guys on vacation, stuff like that. So I was probably desking about 22 to 24 hours a week. And but then I'd have to turn it off when I got on the sales floor. I didn't want to know trade values, and I didn't. I mean, I was still salesman of the year again the next year after I started that program. And then I was salesman again the next year. And I just turned that part off. I would never desk my own deals. And luckily, Jason and Jim would never let me. And they were smart about it. They saw the benefit of me being disassociated with that. And the amount I learned from those two is just amazing.
Yeah. Is that a model that you've continued to use with your teams?
Oh, yeah. I try to allow them to have as much information as they can. I am definitely not a manager that wants to hold back the information. So the idea is that I tell them, I'm going to give you all the information. Now you have to learn how to use it and how to curtail what you know at the right time. Because sometimes knowing it all isn't a good thing.
Right.
So I tell them stories about guys that I gave all the information to, and they failed terribly at it. They couldn't stop with all the information. And I'd have to take them aside and go, hey, because you know it doesn't mean you got to show it.
Right.
Pull back right then because that's hurting you. What you just said there, did you notice it didn't result wasn't a sold car?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that didn't work the way I wanted it
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. I remember as a young salesman skipping steps, and starting to, think I had it all figured out. I remember one time the GSM called me into his office, and he was that old school GSM, and he kind of lit into me pretty good. I walked out of his office straight into a guy wearing, remember those corduroy Hobie Cat shorts, from the 80s? And he was wearing flops and a tank top, right? This guy's looking like a hobo, and it's a BMW dealership. He's looking at this convertible 325i on the showroom floor, and he says, how much for this one? And I was like, well, sir, don't you want to drive it? Let me just kind of move things out of the way. We'll get it out of the showroom. We'll let you drive. No, son, if you're going to have to do all that, if you can't tell me what the price is and I had to tuck tail and walk back into the sales office, and we ended up selling the car. It was
Lucky.
money. It took first pay was a car that had a birthday. We couldn't sell the damn thing because it was light blue with tan interior and then dark chocolate canvas convertible. So
I don't think they make those anymore.
no, the GSM's like, do not put the roof up on that car.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
anyway, good times. So when you went to those days back, how long was it before you started working on the desk then?
Oh, probably 7 years.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, well, one thing that I did do is Michael ran me through the store. So I did service. I mean, I did all kinds of stuff at the dealership. I really got to learn it. And I grew up in a business with car audio, and before that, building and working on cars and custom cars and stuff like that. So my foundation, I think it's one of the reasons Jim and I got along so well. We had no cars.
Yeah.
He worked at his father's dealerships, and then he worked at a gas station, you were talking about pumping gas. That's something he tells me stories about,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was going through I should say the dealership cycle for 6 to 7 years. Yeah, going through and learning it in a great way. I mean, obviously I learned enough by then, but I was doing really well. I was offered positions earlier than that, but it was a position where I was on a good wave. I liked it, selling cars then at that time and selling a high volume of them. I mean, Acura had a precision team thing where you could be gold and gold and gold,
Right.
platinum. I was getting all nice trips all over the place and everything else. So it wasn't a bad gig.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting that in the car business, since you've worked in all these different places, a lot of times you go into a store and there's definitely this dividing line between variable side of the house and the fixed op side of the house.
Yeah.
How did you, I feel like just your personality, like that didn't exist where you were, but how did you manage that? Because there's always kind of that angst of, oh shit, here comes another salesman. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to want something.
Exactly. Yep. The first thing I noticed is, wow, in service, you get told no a lot, way more than in sales. You're trying to sell upgrade. And of course, every customer's been told by their salesman that these cars don't need any work.
Right.
You'll do an oil change for the next 5 years. That's it. Couple oil changes, and then you're sitting there a year later trying to get $500 from them.
Right.
So you're like, your salesman told you that. Well, let me bring him over here. So you get told no a lot, daily, over and over and over. No. So that was a check on it. But then with the salesman, luckily I'd proven myself in the sales immediately. So, I had bona fides and we worked it together. Then I realized that being in service, a lot of service people have never done sales. So they didn't have that background.
Right.
It really helped me out.
Yeah.
It added a powerful component that when I see other dealerships, I can tell ones that haven't. And I talk to them like the dealership that I ended up dealing with my side-by-side with and where I get it serviced. They know what I do for a living, and they've actually asked me, hey, did you like the way that went? And I go, well, if you're open to suggestion and conversations. And then 2 days later, they called me, hey, our lady at Parts really liked that idea. She said she's been doing that. I go, a name goes a long ways, not giving your name out to anybody, call after call, I'd call there and nobody would give me their name. It was almost like they were hiding who they were at the other end of the phone. Even when I asked them, I go, "So who am I speaking with?" I'm in parts. Like, what?
Okay.
That's your response to my question?
Right.
I'm in parts. It's like they were hiding because they'd had so many errors in the past or problems. I don't know what it was, but and then when I went in there to pick up, so I picked up a wheel and tire, and we had a conversation about it, and then they realized the power of that and the benefit of it, and appreciated it,
Yeah.
because they hadn't come from that sales mentality. I would love to have. That's something I don't have at this dealership, and tried to. Hey, would you like to go to service for a couple months or
Right.
6 months? That turn, it's hard because I've got two advisors that don't want to move out of those positions. So I was fortunate to get that. Where a lot of people maybe don't. It was a spot of luck for me at the time.
Yeah. It's funny. There's a guy who has a podcast named Chris Collins. He's actually a Northwest guy as well. I think he started at University of Volkswagen or something right by the U District. And he's a fixed ops guy.
Okay.
And I listened to his podcast, and like I always wanted to get past the drama. So I've always made a point of really making a good relationship with this, not just the service manager or the parts manager, but the people that are working in those departments, even the techs for that matter. It just,
exactly.
at the Subaru store I worked at, I had to walk through service to get to the sales office. So, I just made it my habit just to say good morning to everybody on my way in. And, but even with that, like I learned so much from listening to this guy's podcast about the challenges that people in service are dealing with, the challenges and I think a lot of times we don't understand what one another's challenges are.
Exactly.
And that if we did, like I was listening to his podcast, I remember thinking, man, we would have been so much more effective had I known some of these elements. I wish I could speak to them now, but I think it's the basic thing that I really came away with was just go understand what your coworkers are dealing with.
Yeah, exactly.
And how can I help? Because if you can help them, it's going to come back to you in spades the other way. And I think everybody really wants that.
Definitely. You were talking about walking through service. So I started that years ago. I'm not just walking, but I do 3 and 2, and I've been doing that for so many years now. I can't even remember. Clear back at Acura, 3 days a week. I park in different spots than I do the other 2, and I enter the building at a different spot every single time. So I've been doing that now for clear back at Acura, at Tonkin Acura. So I'll come in parts one day, I'll come in service, I'll come in the other door of service, I'll come in parts. I pull in the service drive and park in the service drive once every 2 or 3 weeks. Pull up there. Hey, do you want your car washed or something, Martin? Nope, just coming in. Wanted to say hi, I'll walk in, talk to the advisors, drop off donuts or something, say hi, go back out, get in my car and move it.
Right.
It's just a different perspective of it. It's, it's like pulling right up and seeing firsthand what's going on in each spot. With the technicians, I come in the back door, I go through the detail bays, and it's just a perspective of the dealership that you gain. Me working on cars when I was a kid, I'm not scared of the shop. I have friends that are GMs that never go in the shop, never walk through the bays. They know who their techs are, but there's a big difference. Now, and I'm not saying you have to work on cars, but you don't want to ignore that part of your business. You still got to walk through there. You got to talk to them, spend a couple minutes. We're all, again, like way back to the beginning of this conversation. It's all about the people.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's funny because it's real easy to look at someone for their numbers, right?
Yeah.
But you get to know them when you look at their workspace, when you get to know a little bit more about what's going on, and then it's conversation. So it's funny, like I appreciate that you brought that up because it got me thinking, like, what are some of the things that you do to connect with your leaders in each of your departments to kind of are there KPIs you're looking for? Is there a pulse? How do you manage your leaders?
I am, and I think, or I know that Jim, Jason, if Michael was still here, he'd say the same thing in a way that would want to smack me upside the head. But I am not a big report person. I look at the numbers very fast, very briefly, and then I walk straight to the person. I talk to them. I can tell usually within 5 to 10 seconds from their eyes, their body language, it hasn't been a good couple days in service. Or when I see them dancing on their feet, it was a great day yesterday. So and you can see it, and they know that I'm coming.
Yeah.
They know that I'm going to come by. If I ever see big days, I measure the advisor output through there through revenue, not gross profit. That's the way I've chosen to do it because they can't control the profit of things, especially the last 3 years. They can't control that things have went up, but they can control what they're selling. So I want them to sell based on revenue and how they're doing that, and then I can see those numbers, and it's a bigger number. We both know that. Doesn't mean I'm ignoring the gross profit, but it's a bigger number. It actually helps them feel better at ease, gets more comfortable with it, and they know they're in control of it. They're upset if all of a sudden, well, he wants to order that motor and do this. It's only got, $250 of profit in it. I don't want that job. Well, don't worry about it. In fact, your pay scale is not even going to be based on it.
Right.
So, wow, you lighten them that way and stay in and look at it that way. It put them, again, just like with sales, putting them in control of what they can control. Yeah, the last 3 years, that's been a huge thing. They can't control the profit on these parts back there. They can't control the markup on it. So I don't want them to freak out about that. I don't need it to be a negative department. I don't need it to be a negative feeling. I want it to be positive. And it really helped when we switched over to that. Yeah, that was about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And it's been a good feeling. Yeah. And our numbers have gotten better.
Yeah. So that's a funny thing, right? We talk about that a lot, that it's too often we get too fixated on the scoreboard that we miss all those steps that enable us to achieve a high score. Whatever it is that you're shooting for. It's really looking at, from an internet perspective, we look at, you can't we see close rate is the big thing that everybody wants to look at.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, you got to you can't set appointments with people you don't talk to. So contact rate's got to be a big one. And then appointment set, or what are we doing to confirm them? How many of those appointments show? It's like all of these areas, it's one of the things we break down every month with our team with our clients is looking at the numbers to identify where those weak spots are in their performance,
Yeah.
But so the curious question for you, when you look at your team now, and you've been there how long now at Key Acura?
Just about in July, it'll be 2 years here right now.
Yep. Do you feel like at this point in 2 years, like this is your team now?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I have technicians. The technicians have my cell phone number in their cell phone. They call me about stuff. They're like, hey, I'm actually at home and doing this, and my wife wants to know this. Is in 2 weeks okay if I take a Tuesday off, half a day? Great. So
wow.
And these are at technician level, managers, everything.
Wouldn't that be something that they would call their service?
Yeah, they still would or could. Yeah, and the service manager and them still get along great, and they have a fabulous relationship. In fact, our service manager does, but they feel comfortable enough to me that's why it's happening. It's not like they're not trying to go around it.
Yep.
They don't even look at that. They're like, you want me to ask for that because I just had a half a day off like 2 weeks ago. But this is a big thing with our kids. Our kids doing this play right at 1 o'clock. There's no way you can get to work and back. And he's like, oh man, I don't know. So it and sometimes they're group texting Santi and I at the same time. They're looking for like, please,
right?
Please. And I push family first. So
nice.
The chances of getting a no on that are pretty obscenely low.
Yeah.
So we really push family first in all departments here, from everything, sideways, up and down. It doesn't matter if you're a valet or, the GSM.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, I think it's funny, man. I love the car business and I hate the car business at the same time. There's those little things that you just, maybe things would have been different had I worked with Martin Parr. I don't know, but so with the team you have now, what do you feel like the team has really embraced? That if you had three things that you could say we're doing really well right now, what would those three things be?
Um, I would say in putting the client first, sales, parts, service, but putting them first, not meaning you're just saying yes to them or agreeing with them, um, that they're learning who they are, addressing them by their name when they come in, realizing who they are. That's why I spend time in service. And I see the clients that came in that bought a car a year ago or 6 months ago, and they're getting their oil change. And then they recognize me. They're like, "What are you doing back here?" And I'm like, "I'm everywhere." And
Right.
the idea, I want to be in service, sales. Um, I pick up parts. I go and do car pickups at the tent shop, do all that kind of stuff. So I like to meet all the vendors out there
Yeah.
people are dealing with. Um, so putting the client first, the people first, in every aspect. I mean, we're delivering 2 cars to clients today to their houses. The one that just called this morning and asked at the last minute because it did snow last night here again, another 3 inches.
Gee.
And so they asked if we deliver it, no problem. And then the other one is like, well, if I leave it there, I want to get this and this done. And could they put sealants on my car and do this too? And could you just bring it up to the house afterwards? No problem.
Wow.
So that's what I guess we mean by the client first, just whatever we can do.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Two, same thing, almost in reverse to the sales people, the service people, the parts people, is that they're feeling empowered to make a lot of the decisions.
Mm,
I do not have them come to me with the stuff that they know I would say yes to.
right.
They know that I am people first and people centric in that regards. Tell them yes. Feel empowered to tell them yes. The worst case is you have not thought it through, and we'll talk about it later. But just say yes.
Mm,
Yeah, go ahead and emboldens that employee. It strengthens them in their position. The client sees it as a point of strength too. They didn't have to come and ask for it.
right. Right.
Yeah, and they get an answer from one person. They're happy with that, and it hardly ever backfires. I mean, once a month or every 2 months, we have something that comes up of, oh, well, they didn't know that card maybe had already been promised out to somebody, or something had happened that nobody put in writing, but 3 people said yes to the same thing within 2 days. But we figured out a way. I didn't have a demo for a week because we had overpromised a couple of cards. So I'm like, here, take my demo. That's fine.
Yeah.
But we made it work. Yeah.
Mm, okay. So, and it's funny, man, because the empowerment thing is huge.
Yeah.
In what we're doing with building teams is too often we have this situation, we call it the player coach syndrome, where the managers are constantly dropping down to do the work of their people because for whatever reason, and we've all done it from one time or another, where,
Yep.
well, it's just faster if I do it myself.
Yeah.
It'll get done the way I want it to get done, or whatever that is. But
I love the way you said that because that was a conversation a lot when I first got here.
was it?
Sales managers were closing too many deals
Oh,
because
wow.
some of it was belief, but some of it was they felt that was what they had to do. And I'm like, but they go, well, he can't do that. I go, he can't do it because you won't let him do it. Let him do it. Empower him. Teach him how to do it. And believe me, in a couple of weeks, you won't have to worry about it anymore. I
Right.
go, do you want 3 or 4 salesmen here that all need closers, or 3 or 4 salesmen here that never need to be touched?
Right.
And we're all on their own, doing it all themselves.
Yeah.
And stop babysitting them, too much. Stop holding their hands too much. However you want to word it. But the point is again, even that empowering that position.
Mm,
And by doing that, you're not putting your hands on everything.
yeah.
Let them salespeople do what they need to do. Let the service advisors do what they need to do.
Yeah.
The parts manager, we had a discussion a while back, and he goes, hey, I want to give so-and-so wants to take this day off and all that. I go, man, you're the parts manager. You don't have to ask me that stuff.
Mm,
That you run your department how you need to. If there's not coverage back there and I find out it's an issue, then we'll talk about it. But for now, don't worry about it.
right. Right.
I'm assuming that's like that in most stores, and I would hope so, but I don't need to know those minute particulars of, who's working where, what, if the store's covered and everything's operating well.
Yeah. It's almost
So,
like you're creating stress for yourself when you micromanage things like that, right?
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Not worth it.
If you hire good, I believe in that, um, uh, I heard it from my son works for a coaching facility up in Bend, Oregon called Boss, and they had a saying in there about hire the right managers so you can always have days off, not the right managers that you're in control of, so it makes you look good. You know, it was something along those lines.
Right.
I don't care about that. I want it. If you've got people that are that good, you know, and there, and you could take time off and go to your kids' games and do that kind of stuff, that's the best crew of people you could have.
Mm.
You know, you want to know that the place is secure, that they're making the right decisions, because then when you're there, they're doing the same thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that, right? It's a conversation I've had a few times now on the podcast around even that model of, so often I see this glass ceiling in the car business where the management team gets up to a certain point and then the GM's like, I think you're good. I think this is all you're meant to achieve in life. And
yeah,
then they get calls from corporate saying, hey, we're opening a new store. We're thinking Johnny there would be a good fit. And then they start running interference on Johnny and
not a good
lose him.
Not a good look, not a good feeling, not a good vibe. Um, that's I was luckily not to be in a culture like that. With Jim Brown and Jason Jellison, they supported the moves that came, even from when went to Gran Turismo, and Jim took me into his office. He's like, I really don't want you to go, but I'm right to stop you from going, you know. And he gave me the reasons, you know. He had the talk with me, which I respect to this day immensely. And then 2 or 3 years later, we had a conversation about that talk. And he goes, you remembered it just like that? And I go, yeah. And he goes, wow. He goes, man, he goes, I just didn't want you to leave. And I go, and I respected your position on that. You know, we had more now than I did that, you know? So, but you don't want that glass ceiling. You want them to, at Gran Turismo, the 2 of the salespeople there out of the 3, there's only 3 on the floor. One was bellman at a hotel. The other one was one of my lot attendants, my valet.
Wow.
And neither one of them was breaking 30,000 a year. And they're doing a heck of a lot better than that now.
Yeah.
So
right.
just being able to see it, and I don't do interviews sitting down. That I guess that's a little bit of a change of subject there, but
yeah,
I interview them. We do a walking through the parking lot, talking. I've interviewed finance people that way, sales people that way. I want to see how they are on their feet, handling multiple tasks at one time, purposely walking through service when I'm talking to them to see how they interact with personnel, walk through the shop. I'll walk straight down the middle of the shop bay with an employee, even if they're a salesperson.
Right.
Because if they're talking to them or making comments that are, you know, not in line with my beliefs, you know, or something, things, you'll pick up on it. And that's perfect for me. You know, I can see and how they really are. And I've been doing that for years now.
Man, I love that. I've not heard that when I've done that. That's a great way of looking at that. Huh. All right.
Yeah, I did an interview at Starbucks. Just about a year and a half ago. I'll never forget it because I wanted to get off site for this interview and see how this person was. I had met him here for like 30 seconds and I basically punted him out of my office because I just didn't want to do it here at the work, or in my office is what I didn't want. And so met at Starbucks a couple of days later. And while we were there was a traffic accident right behind us in the parking lot. A big one. Car went over an embankment, crashed. A baby was in a child seat. Another lady was it hit that car, smashed. Somebody driving way too fast to the parking lot. And I jump up and I run into the car and he's still talking to me. And he goes, well, you know, this, and he's talking about something that was a problem at the dealership he was at. And now I'm clear up at the car. I've got the passenger door open on the car and he's still talking about it about 50 feet behind me. And I've obviously you can see where my mind was. And I had made up my decision by then. But man, you know, that's what I'm looking at is how they interact in the the real world around them.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you prioritizing things?
You know, in the moment, see, I'm running away from you. You know, this car's hanging over the embankment. One tire, the right rear tire was still up in the air, like 2 feet up in the air. You know, it still was spinning. And I'm like, I don't need to talk about that anymore. We're done.
This guy really wanted the job.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, all right. So there's a little exercise we like to do. And one of those things, we call it the 3 A's. And So something about somebody that you admire, something, a little story about some adversity that you've overcome and an achievement that you've made in your career.
Admire in this business, that's easy for me. From the very start, Michael Cho,
Mm.
things that I'll remember, like I said, I'll take forever. Um, and that'll be with me for eternity. I love the stuff that I've got. He even taught me the things not to do, and many of them he pointed that out to me. He goes, "I taught you that, but you know not to do that." So it was a different way of teaching, but it was effective.
Yeah.
Um, and then Jason Jellison and Jim Brown, those two, Jim Brown and Jason are just sometimes I can go months without talking to them. Sometimes it's days without talking to them, but we'll still call each other and talk and throw ideas around. Um, they both lead people first, which I'm
Yeah.
greatly pleased with. There's other people that have taught me things in the business or that I've learned from, but they don't manage that way. So they've kind of fallen off to the wayside in my life. But those two are definitely people first. Everything from the simplest things like pay plans and days off to how they know their employees. You can tell, and how they know their customer base and everything that they do and how they interact.
Right.
So yeah, and they're both very smart guys. They'll both tell me when I'm doing something wrong or kind of sounds stupid, Martin. That doesn't sound like that's a very effective way. Well, I tried it for 8 days, and you're right, it wasn't very effective.
Those are our best friends. The one
Yeah,
buckles on our shit, right?
yeah, yeah. So sometimes when I see one of their names up popping on my phone, I'm like, oh, what did they hear? What did they just do over the last couple of days? Did I do something really dorky? What was it?
Shit. That's funny. Okay. So,
The next one.
an adversity that you've overcome.
Oh, coming down here to Reno was a big one.
Mm.
Brad Tonkin, a great friend of mine, and obviously, you know, my boss, Brad Ned, up in Oregon. But Brad had me in the office a couple of years ago, and Michael got sick at the store, and we realized he was sick, and we had a conversation that went on for a while up there, and it was to come, hey, what do you think about Reno? And I'm like, well, I think I haven't been there in at least 30 years. Well, we need some checks signed down there. We need this done. We got some personnel issues. We got employee stuff, and Michael can't go in. So I was on a plane the next day and down here, and ended up loving it. It was amazing. It was a big change in life, and luckily they supported me 100% in it and made things work on it. And it's been phenomenal. But it was a big change, obviously coming from Oregon to here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that might not be an adversity of, how to overcome something directly in sales, but that was a big thing for us and my family.
Mm. Yeah, it would be, right? Anytime you're picking your family up, and
Yeah.
it's probably not something that you and the missus would have been having conversations about
But it was
during
great.
prior.
2 weeks later, I go back up for our son's wedding, and I go, honey, you've got to fly down with me next week. I go, heck with that, just drive me down, drive me back. You're gonna love this spot. I spent
Wow.
every night here after work, driving around. I was doing about 150 to 200 miles a night, driving through the mountains, looking at going to the lake, going to the other lake on the other side of town, going to the hills, going to the different neighborhoods, the restaurants, just seeing if I like the vibe. I'm thinking I got to make a decision fast.
Yeah, right.
To be able to see if this is a place that I want to bring my family, or if I'm just going to get this done and go back home.
Mm.
And now I've chose to make Reno my home, and I love it.
Wow.
Yeah,
What? That's great. I love hearing that, man, because it's funny how things like that can pop up in a moment's notice and change our lives
yeah,
forever, right? It's
yeah. I was as Jason Jellison would put it, a fabulous internet manager. He put me in that position about 15 years ago at Acura, and I got to keep that position for almost 12 days. I was so good at it. He goes, Martin, you can't say that in your email. And I say, Martin, you cannot say that in your email. I'm like, no, but the guy can. I go, if you can't afford it, I gave him the number to the Honda store. I told him to go buy an Accord. He goes, no, you didn't tell him to buy an Accord. You told him to buy a Civic. And I go, okay, same thing. It doesn't matter. He goes, Martin, and then the next day, After about 11 days, he goes, you know what? It's just not going to work. You're not going to be an internet manager anymore. So that was an adversity I guess I didn't overcome.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, and then an achievement.
Um, Keeping my family and I all happy through all this, the changes over the last 20 or 30 years of the car business. I believe coming down to a store like this that Michael had ran and he founded from the ground up, he built the store and did a fabulous job of it, and to just be able to continue that on. I definitely will consider that an achievement. It was not easy. It still isn't easy, but being able to get it flowing and going smooth, introducing my personality to everybody. I'm a little louder, more obnoxious, and fun, I guess, than Michael ever probably intended for me to be here. But it worked out. So now we goof off here, and we just had a company party last week at a bowling alley go-kart arena, and go there and goof off and just do things like that and just keep things light and realize, hey, it's a job, but we're still living,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I'm really grateful that we got to meet, Martin.
Thank you, Chris.
It's funny that it's taken this long because I like you. I think the world of Jim Brown, and it's funny that he would have good people as his friends. So
he does.
yeah. Well, and I'm glad we got operators like you. Quite honestly.
Well, thank you.
We need more of that, and I think there's people out there, but I think now in this time as we come out of COVID and all the things that we can't control with supply chain and manufacturers and everything else, we got to pivot in this game to retain it. And I think your client first approach is really, if we take that approach, I was talking with a client today, like, why are the salespeople at work? What's their purpose? Well, they sell cars. No, they really don't. They're there to make an amazing customer experience of one of the biggest purchases that their clients will make. It's how are we coming into work every day? And if we're coming into work just to sell cars,
no, you got to be turned on mentally, emotionally. You got to have a good house life behind you, and make it a part of your life. It's part of who you are. Embrace that culture. Embrace making yourself better every day. Empower yourself to be better. Are you doing something to make yourself better every day you're doing that job? Are you reading about the industry? Are you reading about how to, keep yourself on top of everything? And I don't mean like as far as the car sales, but I mean on top of life. Are you doing things that's setting it up right when you go home that you're still happy? When you come to work, you're still happy. When you're at work, you're happy. All of it's smooth all the way around. It's not just, hey, it's not just always be closing. It's not always be selling,
Those things sound great. And coffees for closers and all those things, right? But at the end of the day, if we're really serious about what we do, it's really about our customers, and if we take care of them, take care of our staff, everything else takes care of itself, So
definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna put a bookmark in this conversation, and I dare say we're gonna have another one of these conversations down the track. But
that's good, Chris.
Martin Parr, I really appreciate you being a guest on the show today, and I look forward to our next conversation.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.